If you're watching this, that means you're either very dedicated to the Kraken, maybe to the point where it's a problem, but I'm one to talk. Look at me here making a video about this game. Either that, you like pain, or you're a Sabres fan, which I guess those last two things are somewhat similar. Either way, whatever the case, I appreciate you being here. What's cracking, everybody, and welcome back to Kraken R&R, where the Seattle Kraken, for the first time in franchise history, lose to the Buffalo Sabres 6-2, losing their fourth straight game, and pretty much killing any chance that they had, even a sliver of a chance that they had, at making the postseason. Now, they're not mathematically eliminated, but yeah, I can say with a pretty good amount of confidence they will not be in the playoffs or particularly close to them by the end of the season. And you know what, to be honest, this is exactly the type of game that normally I'd probably do one of the no jersey angry rant style videos where I'd go off on the team for playing a heartless, sloppy, completely uninteresting game where they basically give away a win in a game where they absolutely needed to win it to try to save their season. Well, they needed to win this game and then like 8 of the next 9 games to save their season. But the point is, they came out and did not play like a team that deserves to be anywhere near the playoffs or even thinking about the playoffs in this game. And yeah, there still is clearly some of me that has that energy towards this game and maybe would think about doing the video that way. But especially with this pretty much being the last nail in the coffin for a disappointing season, I can't bring myself to feel anything other than, I don't know, disappointed for sure. Now, even with all that said, it's certainly not the worst game the Kraken have ever played. Heck, it's not even the worst game they've played this season or this calendar year of 2024. And things look good for them right off the bat in the game, as 24 seconds in, they're on the board with Jordan Eberle scoring off of a couple crossing passes between Dumoulin, Tolvanen, then back to the slot for the Eberle shot that gets the Kraken right on the board in that first shift. But then, before you know it, it's 3-1 Sabres. And the first one of those comes just 25 seconds after Eberle gets his 15th of the season. We're still in the first minute of the game, and it's 1-1 with both teams scoring on their first shot on goal. Unfortunately, though, one of the goaltenders would bounce back, and it was not Joey Daccord, as he has easily his worst night in the NHL. He ends up letting in 3 goals on 6 shots, and just clearly was not seeing the puck whatsoever. Now, to be at least a little bit fair to Daccord, and Hackstall said as much after the game, and rightly so, all 3 shots were off of the rush with space and from relatively dangerous locations. So there's already a lot to not like about how the Kraken were playing in transition going towards their end of the ice to allow these rush chances and time for the shooters to have that time to pick their spot and take their shot in all 3 occasions. With that having been said, though, all 3 of them, the first one coming from Tage Thompson to Joey's left-hand side, that one, the one right after Eberle scores to open the game up. The second one, which comes from Jeff Skinner, and that's to Joey's right, and then the third one that's right down the middle from Tuck. All 3 shots are, again, even if you don't like giving up shots like this, especially this often and this quickly in the game, still the type of shots that are very savable for any goaltender, but especially Daccord, and especially considering we've seen him make saves like this look routine over the course of the season. Unfortunately, like I said, he just was not seeing the puck whatsoever. All 3 go past him, and that was enough for Hackstall. He knows all too well that those are normally saves Daccord has no trouble making. He pulls Daccord and puts Grubauer in, which is probably a good thing because the Sabres continue to press throughout the middle of the first period and probably would have scored a couple more times based on how Daccord was seeing the puck in this game. Grubauer is able to keep the Kraken still within 2 until they get a late power play in the first, which actually for the Kraken is a 4-minute double minor and easily could have been a major, as Peyton Krebs pulls a completely brainless 0 IQ play, moronically dragging his stick across the face of Bjorkstrand as the 2 of them leave the offensive end. Bjorkstrand not even really looking at the play, he's starting to go back the other way as Krebs just passes him with his stick held up high, intentionally dragging it into Bjorkstrand's face. He still at least gets the double minor, and the Kraken, with Bjorkstrand fortunately being okay, are able to make quick work of the first half of this double minor. It's the second unit out on the ice, with Bjorkstrand taking a little bit to recover from having a stick dragged across his face. So with that second unit out, the Kraken get a good cycle, and then a one-timer, I'm pretty sure, for Tolvanen that goes off of the shoulder of Beniers out in front of the net, then bounces way up in the air over everybody and lands off of the post behind Luukkonen in net for the Sabres. Nobody seems to be able to find it. In fact, Beniers is still looking for it after it goes off his shoulder, but both he and the guy drafted 1 spot above him in Owen Power find it at the same time. Fortunately, though, Beniers is able to get his stick to it first and shoves it into the net to give the Kraken the power play goal and bring them back to within one, still with 2 minutes on the power play. Unfortunately, they are not able to score a second time on the second 2 minutes of that double minor, so we go to the end of the first with the Kraken still down just one. Now, the one other thing about this first period that I forgot to mention and all that is that midway through the period during one of those presses by the Sabres, Alexiak ends up taking a shot right off the inside of the knee. It must have caught him somewhere the pads aren't. He could not put weight on that leg, stayed on the ice clearly in a lot of pain, though refs do not blow the whistle, which they sometimes will when there's a clearly injured player. Instead, they let the play continue in the offensive end with Alexiak in pain face down on the ice. He still somehow manages to have the awareness and, I don't know, puts together or puts aside the pain long enough to stick his leg out and block one more shot while laying on the ice. Either way, eventually the puck goes out of play to stop play, so Lexiak can get help off the ice and down the locker room. He would not return for the second period, but actually does come out at the start of the third. So hopefully that means that he's okay, even with probably a couple days of a very sore knee here with the 2 days off the Kraken will have. I mean, they'll be practicing, but maybe not Alexiak. Anyway, with that said, we head to the second period with the Kraken down one and also on the kill, having taken a penalty. I think it was Tolvanen, one of 2 penalties Tolvanen took in this game. That happens with 30 seconds left in the first. Unfortunately, the Kraken are able to kill off not only the 30 seconds at the end of the first period, but also with a couple big saves from Grubauer, the minute and a half that starts out the second. But the Sabres, a few minutes later, will get another power play, which the Kraken also have to kill off with some help from Grubauer, which gets us into the middle of the second period, and things just continue to not go well for the Kraken. Eventually, Grubauer does let in a couple of back-to-back goals. The first one, I mean, there's not a whole lot he can do about it. It's a shot on net from way up high that gets deflected in front, goes off of the post behind him, and then out to the other side, so he's having to look all over the place. The shot goes right across his face, so he's looking that way, then it bounces off the post out to the other side, and by the time he sees the puck go out there, it of course goes straight to Owen Power, who puts it in the basically half-empty net behind Grubauer. Again, absolutely nothing Grubauer can do about it, so Power answers Beniers' goal, both of the top 2 picks in that draft scoring, and the Sabres take back the multi-goal lead. Now, obviously, that's not ideal, and it's a horribly unlucky bounce that goes against you, but you're still not out of the game at that point, down 2 midway through the second period, and you've been getting some pretty good scoring opportunities, so as long as you can pull it together, you still have a chance to get back into this game and at least keep that very outside miracle chance of making the playoffs alive. But it certainly doesn't help when 42 seconds later, you let them score again, another one that Grubauer really doesn't have too much of a chance on. The Sabres are right back into the offensive end. They're allowed to get pressure up by the net, which leads to a pretty good screen, and Grubauer just never sees the shot until it's behind him. It's Jeff Skinner once again, making it 5-2. Now, I suppose from this point on, for those of you that are even more optimistic than I am, and like to really only look at the positives from games, the positive here is that the Kraken really do play very well over the last 30 minutes of this game, or maybe not quite 30 minutes, 29 minutes of the game after this 5th goal goes in for the Sabres. Unfortunately, they're already down 3 goals at this point, but they do get back-to-back power plays, or very close to power plays here in the back half of the second period, both of which they nearly score on, but can't quite manage to do so. So we still go to the third with the Kraken down 3, and obviously it's going to be a tough ask for them to come back. Still, they make a good effort of it, getting most of the pressure in the offensive end, somehow evening the shots on goal, which had become pretty lopsided in Buffalo's favor over the first 2 periods, especially over the first 30 minutes of the game. They're able to even that shots on goal, get a lot of chances, a lot of offensive zone time, but just cannot score, including a power play midway through the third period that I honestly don't know how they didn't score on it. Andrei Burakovsky, after having started to heat up here over the last little bit, seems to be right back to being snake bitten, as he had a couple of chances on this power play that really should have ended up in the net, but don't. And we get into the last few minutes where at this point it's just frustration, clearly, obviously out on the ice for the Kraken. They're, I wouldn't say a sloppy mess necessarily at this point in the game, but you could very much tell that the frustration had fully set into this team, and it was somewhat evident in how they were playing. and that does eventually lead to the 6th goal for the Sabres. It's another rush chance, and which allows a pass once again, somewhat off the rush, to go from the faceoff dot right out into the slot where Jeff Skinner is crashing. He fires off the one-timer and beats Grubauer more cleanly this time. It's probably a save Grubauer could have had, though at this point in the game it hardly matters. What does matter, though, for Jeff Skinner is that he ends up with a hat trick. A couple hats end up on the ice, then another one is thrown on the ice after play resumes, so just a weird night all around in a lot of respects, but for the Kraken, weird in a very bad season-ending type of way. So once again, the Kraken lose 6-2, and even if they did play the last half of the game pretty well, they were already down 5-2 at that point for a variety of different reasons. Sure, Decord was absolutely not on it whatsoever by any stretch of the imagination tonight, but at the same time, the Kraken defensively were definitely not playing very well themselves. Even with Grubauer in net, they were forcing him to make some pretty good saves and just put themselves out of the game when it came time for them to start actually playing in it in that final 30 minutes, and they just couldn't find that little bit of finish, which kind of has been the story, at least offensively, for this team this season, that they just cannot finish to save their lives, even when they do generate some pretty decent scoring chances. And at least if you look at the advanced stats and the shot placement and shot location for a lot of these Kraken attempts, they actually do get a number of chances and some pretty dangerous ones. They just can't get them into the net with any kind of regularity, and certainly not enough to overcome 6 goals against. As far as any other takeaways, I guess the only other thing I can say is that, yeah, the season is basically over at this point for the Kraken. All that's left to really watch is to see how some of the young players play or any potential line combinations I guess they could put out next year. There's the question of whether or not Tolvanen will be back. Obviously, we know Eberle will be at this point. Whether or not Schultz will be back. It would be nice to see either Schultz or Dumoulin start to sit when Dunn hopefully comes back at some point so that Riker Evans can continue to play games. At this point, you're not playing to win as many games as you can. In fact, it would be kind of nice if the Kraken could lose more games to get a better first-round pick. But you want to see how those younger guys play, like Riker Evans, Matty Beniers, and maybe putting those guys in different line combinations or different defensive pairings to see what could work and get them different experiences for going into the start of next year, where obviously lines and that kind of stuff is more decided in training camp, but it's at least something to give that little bit of extra experience at the end of this season. As far as that's concerned, the one line that did play very well for the Kraken pretty much all game long was the Beniers line, with Eberle still on one side of him, but Ellie Tolvanen on the other side as a first there. But the three of them played well. Obviously, they got the Kraken on the board with their first shift 24 seconds into the game. Unfortunately, well, the rest of the team did not play very well. So then I suppose as far as the Kraken 3 stars are concerned, which as always are brought to you by the patrons over on Patreon. If you want to help decide these Kraken 3 stars, or if there are stars after games, you can help support the channel a little bit more than you already are by watching to this point by going to the link down below to Patreon and supporting over there as well, which also will give you the chance to help decide Kraken awards at the end of the season. Either way, as far as this game is concerned, I think Christopher over on Patreon summed it up pretty well by saying, I liked a little of what some of them were doing, but hated a lot of what most of them were doing. And, well, yeah, I'd have to say that pretty much sums it up very well in a short, succinct way. As far as 3 stars, I guess that first line of Beniers, Tolvanen, and Eberle were probably deserving, so I'll go with them just for the sake of it. And until next time, if you made it to this point, let me know what you think down in the comment section below. Obviously, this is a pretty disappointing effective end to a disappointing season with still 15 games left. I think I said 15 in the last video, but I was one off. It's now 15 games left, and a lot of those are against bad teams, so there should still be some fun, entertaining hockey left, even if it likely does mean that it'll make the draft position for the Kraken a little bit worse. Either way, at least it'll make these videos a little bit more fun to shoot and edit and for you guys to watch. Until then, though, if you have made it to this point, thank you very much for watching, and as always, stay safe out there, be good to each other, God bless, and go Kraken.